gonna go in 3, 2, 1, and hi. Hi, welcome back to our second show. 2, that's 4. Okay. So we had a little bit of technical difficulty. It was like operator error on my part. And we're streaming through the Gilmore Gang Ustream today. So I'll change that for next time, but I got too flustered and I couldn't make the switch. So forgive me. And I want to welcome my lovely ladies back. Hello. Hi.
Hey.
How are you? Everyone's here. Oops, and I don't have Mary full screen, so we're gonna have to work on that in a second. I just wanted to say that we had a great time doing our first show. It was a little nerve-wracking. It's a little nerve-wracking right now. I think we're still getting our sea legs. But we had a great time, and I think we got some nice feedback. Right, ladies? I think that, I was just really, really happy that nobody lobbed any nasty grenades. So that to me was perfect. So let me introduce everybody, and I'm going to do Mary last so that I can get her full screen. So let's see. Here we go. And my co-host, Rebecca Woodcock. Hello, Rebecca.
Hello, Tina, and everyone else, and viewers.
And Denise, say hello.
Hello.
That's Denise Howell.
I know.
And hi. Oh, back to me. And we've got Hallie Suit Tucker. Hallie.
Hi.
Hi. And Hallie, you can talk to us just for a second while I get Mary full screen.
It's been a heck of a week. If you worked at the New York Times, maybe we'll talk about that.
Oh, you think?
And it's been an interesting week for Apple and Beats and all these different folks doing interesting things. And it feels a little like people are buying companies and getting kind of into that. So I'm excited overall for that. So I think there's some new things happening that we haven't seen before. And I particularly love, it's like spring, there's the gardening, baseball, and a lot of people wasting money on really stupid startups. So that's, my idea of a good time. And sometimes they make smart decisions and buy good companies for good reasons. But I love the ones when they make completely like, wow, we have to buy it because if we don't buy it, somebody else will buy it decisions. But where's Mary?
And Mary is here, Mary Hodder.
Good.
Hey.
And we've got Mary with audio, so we're absolutely thrilled.
Audio's good.
All right. All right, ladies, so we're back. And I have as Hallie just sort of rattled off, we have kind of an active week. I've got a list of interesting things, but I thought I'd sort of start slow and easy. And did you notice that Facebook introduced this ask about relationships? Did you hear about that?
Nope.
Yeah, I didn't put in that show notes.
No.
I saw it, and I thought it was really weird. Actually, I think Facebook is like, we should redefine a category as like the antisocial network, because both Facebook and LinkedIn would qualify. And I thought that was really weird. I was chatting with somebody on an IM session on Facebook, and we were talking about stuff that was happening, and all of a sudden I get this thing saying, ask about so-and-so's relationship. And I'm like, I'm not asking about this person's relationship. We're having a chat about something completely different. It was just the weirdest, totally bizarre moment. I thought it was so strange.
Right. So from what I understand, there's this new thing called Ask, and if you don't have a relationship status, then you're fair game, I guess, for someone to come in. They have then the opportunity to ask you what your relationship status is. I don't know. Is Facebook just trying to get into the dating game?
Yeah, they just
Online
That's
became
what I
dating.
think, right?
Match.com.
Right?
I think they're trying to just collect more data. I mean, I think that's what they're always in the business of. They want to get more and more and more. And if they don't have something, I mean, they ask me all the time, where do you live? And they say, oh, you have 70 friends in this town and 150 in San Francisco and 300 in New York. Where do you live? And it's just like, I'm not telling you where I live. I don't want you to know. Like, how is that relevant? It's just, I think they are just asking for data. And if they can't get it from you, they're going to ask your friends.
Re- so, Rebecca, are they just butting into our personal lives too much? I mean,
Well,
would you
it's
respond to it?
Facebook. I think they've already butted into our personal lives in ways that we don't even know. And they may be trying to put feelers out to see, is this an interesting feature to expand into something like online dating? I have no idea. Maybe they're trying to increase engagement somehow. I'm not sure what they're doing, but online dating world is a big market, and they could potentially want to get into that. Another way to make revenue, since revenue is going to be an issue for them, and they have to think now about additional ways to add revenue streams, especially now that they're a public company and they have investors to ask, who are going to want to see growth in different markets. So who knows? They may be putting feelers out there.
Denise, would it take much for Facebook to turn into a dating platform, or partially? I mean, is that possible?
It feels really weird. I think Facebook's struggling with what it is right now. Is it professional? Is it personal? Now it's throwing dating into the mix. Is it? Could this be a bid to get the kids to be more engaged on Facebook? Maybe, but this just seems like they're throwing it out there to see if it works. And
I also,
I
I
agree with
also
Mary
think
somewhat that yeah, they're constantly trying to have a fuller profile of you as well. So I it seems it if first a platform that is attempting, who knows what they're attempting to do. I mean, I feel like the way I use Facebook, the way something like this show would use Facebook pseudo professionally, this feels really out of place.
I have the answer. It's in my little pink book. I have all the answers in my pink book. It says Facebook doesn't know what the hell they're doing. So that's the answer.
So
And Facebook apparently didn't see the Facebook movie, because that's how the guy who started Facebook. He was trying to get girls. He was walking around Harvard asking girls if they were single or something. So I don't know. Like, are we having like a breakdown? Are we going back to the beginning? It's very
ah,
mysterious, and there must be some company doing something like it that they're like, oh, maybe we should do this too.
Right.
My
Next
book
step.
says bad
speaking
idea.
speaking
Next
of
step, hot or not.
what,
Yeah, exactly.
oh no, not that one.
No, not that one.
Okay. Speaking of, did you just talk about movies? Yes, you did. Speaking of
Yeah.
movies, did anybody catch the latest episode of Silicon Valley?
Oh, yes. TechCrunch Disrupt was mightily featured. It was
Absolutely.
actually kind of funny. The woman who the only real woman character on the show is the assistant to the Peter Thiel type guy, and she walks them into TechCrunch Disrupt, and she says, "Okay, guys, usually you're dealing with 2% women, and now you've got 15." And one of the guys says to the other, "It's a meat market." Yeah.
That was a
got
nice
time
moment.
to watch? Who's
Well,
got
it's
time to
on
watch?
at
You
like,
guys
I
got
don't
me
know,
hooked on
midnight or
Orphan
something.
Black.
And so,
Thank you.
you fit it in. You're sleeping in your next life, Hallie, if you're intact, so you fit it in.
Speaking of sleeping, and I have put on my sunglasses because
Yes.
the lovely. Oh, I see everyone has put on their sunglasses. Um, shall we see right now? Shall we see that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yep. Okay. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that show's kind of funny and fun. I guess I'll keep watching it, even though it's campy and kind of like a caricature of Silicon Valley. But that I think that makes it kind of fun. And boy, TechCrunch is Disrupt is that's all it is. I mean, that's kind of strange feeling. But and they get some things wrong, but whatever, it's fun. So
Did
so
they? Do you know, Tina, if they paid or who paid who for the TechCrunch Disrupt product placement?
I haven't talked to anybody about TechCrunch about that. I don't know. That'd be interesting to find out because it
They've
sure is all over it.
they've featured it a few times. I mean, they talk. I think almost all the episodes have at least mentioned Facebook, or I
Hmm.
mean, TechCrunch.
Right.
And actually, one of the things that I noticed after this last episode was that the things that happen in Silicon Valley are kind of goofy, right? I mean, there's compared to the
Yeah.
rest of the country, like nobody else in the rest of the country has mini kitchens stocked with hundreds of items, or drives around in a car covered with logos of the last company that they sold or whatever. And so I mean, we do this weird stuff, and so they put it in the show, and it just kind of passively sits there. But in order to make the show, I think, more interesting and more, even more out there, they have to take what we do and sort of, make it an order of magnitude more extreme. And so, there are some things that are not realistic, and they really came out a lot in this last episode. I thought. I mean, it's not an accurate representation, but whatever. It's TV.
Right. It's art. Right. It's art. It's art. It's high art. Okay.
Well,
That we're
I don't know about that.
I don't know
I
about that
think the
either.
prior episode where they got some guy in San Jose, which was really actually, I think, shot in LA, but they got a guy who was an artist to do some graffiti art on the garage,
Oh yeah.
and it ended up being fairly racy. And then the weird twist was that the guy who was maybe a mashup between Larry Page and a little bit Google and a little bit Amazon, CEO type. He
Right.
purchased this garage door, and it had the face of one of the main characters, and it was fairly racy. And I was kind of surprised that they actually put it on the show. It was a little out there, but anyway,
Fairly racy.
racy.
Fairly racy. Do you want to say what it was?
Well,
No.
it was the Statue of Liberty. It looked like she was. Can we swear on this show? She
Oh,
was.
go
I
for
don't
it.
She
think.
was.
Yeah. I don't
I
think
don't
the
know.
FCC
I mean,
is
but
listening.
fucking this man, and his face is fully in the giant panorama of this huge garage door, and then of course they bring it over to the startup, and it looks a little bit like the Google campus. And I mean, there's no way that they would put this in the Google campus, right, or the Amazon
wait a minute.
campus.
Wait,
But
I have a
nonetheless,
question.
It
Okay,
kind of had that.
she's got like all the Statue of Liberty. She's got all that like clothing on. What? I didn't see this. What does this mean? How did she do that?
Well, the whole anatomy is completely exposed. I don't know how much we can say here. I don't know if this is like, R-rated, X-rated, whatever. What could we say on this show?
I
Are we
think
going
I
to be
like
beeped
it
out?
better when somebody retells it than even the show. I mean, it sounds just awful. So
This
Anyway.
is your show. If you want to swear and say racy things, it's okay. It's okay by me.
All right. Well, I've already said butt fuck, so geez.
Yeah, you've pretty much gone there.
But I'm not going any further than that. That's as far as I go.
That's fair. That's fair. So let's change the subject. Okay.
Let's get to something more important. How about that?
So yeah.
I have a movie suggestion
Yes, dear.
on the movie subject. I'm going to throw us quickly into the Abramson New York Times thing because I think a lot of the big excitement about it was also new hat, nice. Other women seeing this, or maybe all women seeing this and going on some level like, hey, that's the movie I've been in my whole life. I've been in a movie called If I'm Too Forceful, They Hate Me. If I'm too quiet, I get nothing. If I compete with the guys, they want me to go away. If I ask for the money I want, sorry, you're a bitch. So I kind of think there was something going on, not about the specifics of her case, but this, like when they finally, in fact, you ever notice they put a movie out that has women heroes in it and women characters in a real life situation that real women live? People are like, it's like mobbed. And I feel like that's a bit what happened. Like some people are like, God, that's my life at work. I know that.
I have a couple of comments about the show, and I'm even going to go meta. So first of all, to address what you just said, Hallie, I would totally agree with you. I think that as I read through comments from, for example, there were people who had worked with her in the past, and they said, she's not pushy. She does what every editor slash manager does at any news org. She was actually pretty easy to work with, and I really liked working with her. So, it's hard to know if the adjectives that the New York Times is putting out there, either directly or indirectly through other folks or leaks, they refer to her in the standard sexist terms, pushy and bossy and all the stuff that we know is, I don't know why they didn't just refer to her as hysterical, because like that's the greatest one, right?
That's the big one.
But they didn't do that. So anyway, I kind of felt like, I've seen a number of women who have been the big boss and have been resented by either the men who are up above, right, the board of directors, in this case the publisher, or guys below. In other words, my own interpretation of this is that when we go to work, unfortunately, we take our personal lives in with us, even if we don't actually walk them into the door. We have a frame of reference. We have a series of filters that we've carried with us all of our lives, and they're reflective of our early experience. And who was the first woman who ever yelled at any of us? Mom. And so you have very few powerful women who are up there doing amazing things, like Jill Abramson being the managing editor of the New York Times. And when mom yells at you, right, or the woman yells at you, it's nearly the same thing. And I think it's unconscious. I think that especially men, when, if they get even if it's not an out and out yell, even if it's just a very direct statement, they take it as if it's, they're 2 years old and it's mom yelling at them, and they go right back to that level of fear and loathing, and they don't want it. And so they do everything they can
I want to hear the other
it
ladies. Rebecca,
and get it out of their work lives.
Well, that's an interesting theory, and there may be some psychology to that, but it's really hard to know what motivated him specifically to do the firing, and especially in the way that he did it, which sounds completely unprofessional. And it sounded like she possibly deserved a little bit more respect as a leader in the business, to have some sort of transition out of the company. But who knows the real details behind the firing of anyone, and who knows what they're also hiding. And I know I've had to walk people literally out of the company before without notice, because they were, if I had given them any time or transition period, they could have potentially done a lot of damage.
Right.
And so there may be a situation there that we don't even know. But it just seems like how it was not the best way to do it.
Yeah, I was on Twitter and I wrote, one of my comments was that, because the publisher, he just It's like a PR person was going like, "Ugh." My comment was his new book is coming out. It's called How to Step in Shit Twice. I mean,
Well,
that's
and
like what he
yeah, I
kept
mean
doing. I agree with you. It's Rebecca.
the thing about her pay, when it was, I gather, leaked to the New Yorker that she was underpaid, and then the New York Times
Yes.
and the publisher said, "Oh no, she absolutely was paid the same. Her compensation package was the same." And then, of course, figures came out, and she was paid $84,000 less, and she had
I
just been
would
talking with
notice
them
that.
about that a month before. So, actually, I want to make a meta comment. Uh, Referring to the other Gilmore show, the Steve Gilmore show, the Gilmore Gang, because I watched the show the other day and I thought the guys had a really interesting discussion about
Yes.
this, and they tied it to the business model of the New York Times. And so I had a reaction to that, and I just wanted to respond to them. So a little bit meta. So the comment was made on that show, I think maybe by Steve. It was a really good assessment of the fact that, and I think this is true in any media company or really any company, if you're making money, you're not going to probably get fired, right? Like if she had been making incredible money for the New York Times and had lifted them out of their current problems, which every old media newspaper has, she probably wouldn't have been in quite the position she was in. The problem is nobody can lift
Right.
newspapers out of this problem, right? Like they're struggling through it. They've been working on it for 20 years. It's going to be a long haul, right? So she wasn't in the position of sitting there editing, being the managing editor of something that was incredibly profitable. Okay, so then there was the discussion about, well, what is the appropriate business model for the New York Times? And they got into a discussion about, whether video is better or some of the different editorial directions, should they be maybe a bit more like BuzzFeed? And frankly, I don't think that they should do that. I think it's a temporary blip that companies like BuzzFeed have headlines that say, seven, I don't know, ways that you can peel a carrot better, click here. And they're these horrible headlines, right? It's total clickbait. And I don't think that the New York Times should be engaging in that either. But what I think the other Gilmore group missed was the comparison to, I love those glasses, was the comparison to NPR. I know NPR is a nonprofit. I know that they have gotten some government funding. I don't know if that's current this year, but because I know there's always, a move in Congress to defund them. But, that model where, I mean, they have a really interesting setup, right? So they produce written news on their website, similar to the New York Times, and they have the radio shows. And then they have local syndicates, right? All the local NPR stations that we drive around and listen to wherever we are. And then they have funding drives where they get funding from the local stations, and there's also national funding drives. And so it is a nonprofit model. It is a really different model. But for me, the quality, the NPR is not straining in the quality of their news or in the headlines. They are not faking us out with BuzzFeed-like headlines. They actually do in-depth reporting. Their radio things are fairly long. They can go as long as an hour, hour and a half, some of their shows. And even their news reports are 3 to 5, 7 minutes. I mean, it's not 30-second TV news like you would see on kind of junk TV. So in my view, I think NPR is actually succeeding better than the New York Times. And I think that if they're going to look forward to a business model, that model is one that they should look closely to, and maybe they should consider becoming a public benefit corporation, something that could work along the lines of, NPR. The other thing that NPR does is they don't block you from looking at the links. Basically 20% of their viewers or listeners or readers fund them, and the rest of it's open because it is a nonprofit. And we can all link to the stories, and it's no big deal. And in the New York Times, you get this limit of 10, I think it's 10 articles per month or 10 videos or whatever it is, 10 links. And, so anyway, that's my little rant on the business model. But I thought it was an interesting point that, her performance was tied to some degree to what the New York Times does, and she was trying to lift them out of the doldrums. And I think succeeded a little bit, but didn't succeed all the way. And they just got frustrated, and I think that was part of the reason why she was booted. But they could have done it much, much more gracefully and with a lot less criticism from the public if they'd done it differently. And you know, so anyway, that's my little rant.
Well, it seems like we're in the midst of uh, shifting business models, and
Yeah.
that's, it takes time and it takes the right, I guess, the right people to pull it off. But I mean, what else? What else does it take? I mean, Denise, I saw you. You were shaking your head or nodding your head before when Mary was talking. Ooh, I've got a friend too, Denise. My
Yeah.
cat is about to jump up on me. And you have a little guy who likes to talk with us. Want to introduce
Yes.
him?
Yeah, she's an
She.
underpaid woman as well. Actually, she's far from underpaid. She's treated all the time, but uh, she's she's joining us today because I didn't have anywhere else to put her. This is Carmel,
Oh,
and there is someone downstairs in our house doing some work, and she gets a little upset with them from time to time. That's why she's barking. But we just had a training session before the show, so we're working on that. Working on ignoring people in the house. Yeah, I think Mary might be on to something. I also think Rebecca makes the really excellent point that we really can't know, what happened here and what the motivations were all around. So it's just, I think it's really hard to speak to this. I think it's it like so many things provides an opportunity for people to air their opinions about equality in the workplace and the state of same today. Um, whether it's equality of compensation or equality of expectations. I wonder. I'm interested in asking you guys if you feel like women are playing on an even playing field as far as their competency goes, as far as being perceived as competent um, and having the ability to. Um, I don't know if it's breaking through the glass ceiling that I want to say, or just do your job without gender coming into play. And I get a strong sense that we're not there yet, but I wonder what you guys think.
well, and to add to that, I mean, do women just do things a different way? Do we just have a different manner,
Sorry.
a different mindset, a different maybe even set of priorities that come into play in the workplace? And how's that perceived? How does that translate then to like what we've been seeing? Also, didn't we also just hear about? I think this kind of is similar. Is Hillary Clinton being accused of having brain damage from her concussion years ago? Um,
Oh, that would be from the guy who really is brain damaged.
right,
Sorry. Carl Rove, hello,
right.
Bush's brain. I mean, that guy, now he knows from brain damage.
Well,
Exactly.
I
and this
think
is from the same folks who years ago, whenever she hit her head, said it was fake. So it
Hmm.
was fake then,
It's
and now it caused brain
crazy.
damage. I mean, thank you for the consistency.
yeah.
But
Well, this
I
is I
agree with you,
think
Tina. I do think that there's a lot of similar background, unconscious beliefs about women and women in leadership or powerful positions that comes into play, and people are just not aware that they're bringing those filters in when when they act or make comments like around Hillary or, when they deal with somebody like Jill Abramson. I think they just don't know that they're operating with heavy, heavy filters.
Well, not to get too political, but the Republican Party's best shot of, um, you know, making achieving any kind of success this next time around is to not have Hillary run at all. So I think that they're just engaging in just preemptive battle right now. I don't think it's heated up enough to really call it battle, but I think this shot with Karl Rove is an example of where they will keep going for a little while.
Well, I think that's a classic case of just dirty politics, and it doesn't matter who the candidate is. They're going to try to pull out whatever dirt they can to try to make the public question their ability to run. I don't think that has anything to do with the gender. Whatever it is, they're going to ask for tax records, how many homes you buy, are you even a U.S. citizen? So these are all tactics. What I do think with this particular case, and also so the brain damage case, and then also the resurfacing of Monica Lewinsky, is that it actually might. It might be in Hillary's favor, actually, because these are instances that will do two things. One, it will humanize her as a person, make her very relatable to just the public in general. And two, it will show that she has the strength and perseverance to endure and to continue and lead and do her job despite all these personal trials that she's going through. So what they probably will find is that it's backfiring. And these aren't cases like some scandal where people have died.
Right.
And we can maybe talk about that in the VA administration in a minute. But their best shot is to try to come up with something where she's actually a villain. And maybe we'll see more Benghazi reports. I have no idea what they'll come up with. But this is just dirty politics to me.
Well,
I would agree with that. I also think that that it might be in Hillary's benefit to have all of these things, bandied around now. I mean, there's two strategies, right? Like you get a lot of people talking about it, and you keep them talking about it, so that could hurt her. But on the other hand, if the public responds and says, who cares? I mean, it just doesn't matter that one or another of these issues is coming out. I don't know, the brain damage or whatever, these different things. If it doesn't stick, then, it's gone. They're not going to bring it up again when the actual election cycle is happening.
Can I add? I mean, I think the big Republican story is they're busy getting rid of the Republican Party and helping create a third party, which will guarantee that they are in very bad shape. And I think from many elections I've seen, when things are really bad in your house, you're busily pointing to somebody else's house about how bad they are. So the more crap like this that comes out, I mean, nobody is missing how much money and time they're having to spend to just have the primaries where an incumbent is fighting it out, Republican against Republican, with the Tea Party people. And so it's really, I mean, she could, go to a sleepover party and win. she could just, I mean, they are destroying their own party so successfully. And Democrats, what are they going to have to do? Nothing. They could just walk into this if they keep going, if the Republicans keep going the way they're going. So it's actually a really interesting pre-election next few months, what's going to happen, because they're just a mess. I think they're quite amazingly a mess. No matter how much money they have and how many Koch brothers and how many, all of it, it's kind of striking to think they have got to do all this battle they would usually do Republican against Democrat. They're doing Republican against Republican now.
Well, there is the notion that if you have to start fighting dirty and fighting personal, that you're probably losing. I mean, that's what I think when I see them do stuff like this. They're blowing it, and they're resorting to that kind of a tactic because they don't have anything.
Hillary will win if she runs. That's
she will
it.
run.
That's it, and she will run.
Who? Hillary?
We hope.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've heard rumors. I spent a lot of time in Washington, D.C. lately working on some healthcare stuff with
Yeah.
the government, and there's a strong feeling there that she will run.
I actually do believe, you ready, girls? I don't think she's going to run.
Wow.
Gasp.
And I'm a
Interesting.
Democrat, and I'm from
Gasp.
Boston, also known as, I live in the People's Republic of Massachusetts, very liberal. I actually think she's not going to run.
Why?
Hmm.
Why
Interesting.
would you run? You're 60, you've done everything. She has a phenomenal record as Secretary of State.
But
Forget it. Who cares?
Hmm.
everything she has done is leading up for this moment. I mean, she is in the prime position to run right now in 2016,
But I
and
don't
her
think
whole
she's going to
career
run.
is a stage for running that. Otherwise, why else would she? Why else would she have taken the path? I can't see a scenario where she doesn't run unless there is something very strongly pulling her away from that, like health issues, which I'm not saying she has. Um, but other than that, it would make no sense if she didn't run.
What if Chelsea ran?
Chelsea. Hey, maybe
Hmm.
we will see that in the future. I don't know. I don't think that Chelsea will run in 2016.
Chelsea is about to be a mommy.
Which actually really helps Hillary. I mean, I think, because then there'll be the photos with the doting grandmother, and that takes away from all the, past Monica Lewinsky, whatever other issues that, Bill and Hillary have had. Now they're the doting grandparents, and nobody
Right.
cares,
It
about photos of
also
stuff.
gets rid of that pushy, it's the not pushy. It's being grandma is okay. Being the pushy female leader, not so okay. So
Right, right.
it's a big plus.
So my sense is that she will run. I mean, everything is pretty teed up for her. I don't know, but that's my sense.
I think
Okay.
that Hallie's just trying to be contrary.
Yeah, which is a good thing.
Yes, I think so.
Keep going.
No, I think she's not going to run. I think that they're more later.
Okay. Okay. So, uh, we all have just a list of things that happened this week. Anybody want to look? It's a big list. So,
Yes. Whatever.
come on. So, there's like
Black Blackface.
there's acquisitions that are real and rumored. Anybody want to talk about any of those? We've got Apple possibly buying Beats. We've got Google with Divide. We've got YouTube with Twitch. Twitter with SoundCloud. AT&T with DirecTV. Pick one. Go ahead.
I was kind of amazed at the DirecTV AT&T thing. When a little company in Silicon Valley gets acquired and they don't have much of a business model, like WhatsApp, so $1 a year for, text messages that don't go through the telephone company and instead, are effectively free if you use the app. So $19 billion, and people say, well, that's completely crazy. But if you break it down per user, I think it was something like $32 to $35 a user, something like that, which is, less than what Flickr was acquired for, or, FriendFeed, or a variety of other apps that have been, or services that have been acquired, somewhere in the $50 to $100 per user range. Well, in the DirecTV thing, it was, it's billions and billions of dollars for 20 million subscribers. Now, granted, I get that cable services are incredibly lucrative, right? So we're talking about, a monthly payment of anywhere from, 20 to, I don't know, maybe even up to $200 a month. I actually don't know what DirecTV sells for because we don't use it. But, I think that it's really, really interesting that 20 million subscribers gets you what? It was like $29 billion or something like that. I've forgotten exactly the acquisition figure, but I thought it was really interesting. If only little Silicon Valley apps could generate that kind of income, they could get, that kind of money.
So AT&T has Uverse. Is the speculation they're going to combine?
Yeah, so the stuff that I read up on it was that that DirecTV, so that's the satellite folks, right? You see the satellites on the side of people's houses, like sticking out a window or something, or on a balcony, and basically it's a different model. It's a direct transmission through the air versus having to be on an actual cable. Cable comes over the cable that goes into your house. And so I think the idea was that AT&T would, add a different type of subscriber. I think Uverse is a combination of cable, right, coming over the cable, plus phone, plus internet is what they really try to sell you on. And they have fiber in some places, and it's DSL in other places, but they're trying to pitch you on, basically $250 a month in services for those three things. And DirecTV is just cable, and it's just that over the air. And they're getting at customers that, for whatever reason, don't or can't have a cable that brings them those other services. So it's
That's what
20
it
million more
sounds like.
subscribers that, are paying a decent amount of money, and they're, you know, it's a different type of subscriber that AT&T doesn't have.
Yeah, it sounds like with a big company like AT&T, if you want to get past the battle of just trying to steal 1% market share from Comcast or whoever, and you want to actually try to grow your market, they will have to go beyond where the cable is currently installed. And so they may be trying to leverage, and I don't know much about this deal, but just hearing you talk, it sounds like they may be trying to expand and grow their actual market and get there before that they can lose it to other companies like Comcast or these other companies who sprout up using satellite technology to reach sort of that last mile, as it's commonly called. Uh, and it sounds like they may want to leverage the existing technology, the satellites that are being. It is, if I understand, leveraging the dish connects to satellite and relays the signal back to the household. That may be a way that they can acquire the assets, leverage the technology, and then deploy into these new last mile type of markets to actually organically grow. That's what it sounds like.
So I just looked it up, and AT&T is proposing to buy them for 48.5 billion, and that's $24,000 plus per customer at 20 million customers. So, and you compare that to, your Flickr or your WhatsApp, and it's, $35 to $100 per customer. It's quite a different business.
How many people do we know personally that have DirecTV? I don't know anybody.
I have it.
Oh, you do?
Yes. And there is an interesting aspect of it. I've never, sort of researched the technology very closely since we got it, which was about, you remember when last year in Los Angeles, and I think it was New York, Time Warner and NBC were in a battle, and you could not get NBC channels if you were a Time Warner customer. And that, we lived with that for over a month. And my husband couldn't take it anymore. So finally we got DirecTV so that we could get NBC again. And then they very shortly thereafter wrapped things up, reached their negotiations. But so I'm still kind of getting used to the DirecTV service. It's quite good versus the cable experience that I've had. The menus are more intuitive. It's easier to find things. But there's this internet component to it. I mean, part of the delivery is by satellite, and there's a dish on our house. But the boxes all use your existing internet connection as well. And so some of the delivery is that way. And you have the ability to access YouTube from all the boxes. And
Okay.
so there's definitely an interesting uh, web tie-in in their delivery technology. And I'm wondering, if that makes sense from the AT&T standpoint as well.
Does anyone think there's a mobile angle here?
There's definitely a mobile angle here. I mean, I think AT&T wants to get that feed, and uh, this is the way to do it. It's DirecTV gives them access to that.
Wow, this is really interesting. So apparently, Uverse has 11 million customers in 22 million states, and
Hmm.
5.7 million subscribe to pay TV. So, I mean, that's interesting. That's combined fewer than the 20 million direct TV. I did not realize that. I assumed because of the breadth of AT&T's business and the amount of advertising that they do, and the fact that literally every 2 3 days I have someone at the front door knocking, trying to sell me AT&T Uverse, and we get stuff in the mail every day. It looks like they're huge, and that's the impression that you get, but it's actually smaller than DirecTV, which I always thought of as a much smaller company. So
Hmm.
It's interesting.
It would be smart for a company like this to, and goodness knows if they'd be able to broker this with all the broadcasters, but it would be smart to make themselves the one box as opposed to having, the Roku box or the computer attached to your stack or however people are getting to things like Amazon Instant and Netflix and the various other IP uh, delivery systems. It would be smart if they could figure that out and deliver both cable and everything else that you can get over the internet. So you satisfy the cord cutters and the people who haven't yet cut the cord.
Well, the set-top
it's an
box
interesting thing. What
market,
I'm seeing, what we did here at home, and what I'm seeing in and around like our neighborhood list for the old Mountain View neighborhood list, right? People talk about what they're doing with their cable and whether or not they've got it and what they've got and who's going to offer what when and stuff. Because Google has proposed offering fiber for the city and stuff. And so, we don't have cable, and we just have internet access. We use our
Mhm.
computers. We plug it into the TV. We have Netflix. We have Amazon. Um, we sometimes we watch stuff on Hulu. We pay for shows on iTunes. You can buy like for $30. You can buy a season of something, and you can buy it right when it's starting. So as soon as it airs on TV, you can then watch it on iTunes. And we've been doing that for 10 years.
Yep.
And we were the only ones who did that for a long time. And in the last
Now,
year, I am hearing from all these
yep.
friends that they're doing what we started doing, 10
Mm-hmm.
years ago. And
Yeah.
so it's interesting to me. I think a lot of people are saying, why am I spending $200 a month? I've got a cell phone. That's an additional $100 a month on top of
Yes.
the phone, the cable, the internet access. Why don't I just pay for internet access and a cell phone, ditch all the rest, and I can cut, $150 a month out of my, budget. I mean, and you can get everything. I mean, there's really just no reason, in my view, to have it other than for sports. And even
Mhm.
sports now are starting to show up on some of those channels and be available either pay per view or, some kind of a model that allows people to just buy a particular game or a season of a team or something like that. And I mean, I feel like cable just gets crazier and crazier with the pricing. I and who watches all that? Like, who has that kind of time? I don't think people do. So it ends up being a huge waste, and I think that's why people are considering changing.
And it seems like the TV networks are saying, "Hey, we've got to expand our live, whatever it is, because that's the only thing that's bringing people in right now
Right.
is
Hmm.
a live show." And uh, I think there was. if it was a Barbara Walters thing that maybe was done live, something that was done live recently, and there was, great traffic, and the broadcasters know this right now. They're I think they're scrambling to figure out what they can do live, and that's I think where they'll end up is just being, purely a live venue.
So I
But
had an interesting
if
conversation
you're a
yesterday
broadcaster, right?
with
You've got a show.
Whoop, two
Let's say
at a time.
like 24 just started back up, and I remember 10 years ago buying 24, a season of 24 on iTunes, right at the beginning of the season. So you'd buy 24 episodes, and I think it was 34.95 or something like that. And the new show has just started, and I think the same thing is available again. And if I wanted to watch it, that's what I would do. I'm actually kind of over it, but nonetheless. But it's coming from one of the broadcasters, right? And
Hmm.
the show is showing up within hours of it broadcasting on whatever TV channel it shows on.
Hmm.
I don't know because I don't care because I'm not tethered to times or channels or broadcasters or anything. But I'm happy to buy a show if I'm interested in it, right? And so I actually think the broadcasters might be okay if they get with the new model of using Netflix and Amazon and Hulu and selling shows on iTunes. That part might be okay because $35 for a show where iTunes takes 30%, that's so much better than they would get from an advertiser. And so if they sell enough of those subscriptions, okay, cool, that means they have to make good content, but if we like it, we're going to buy it, right? Like it's well worth the $35 to me, and I'd much rather do that for a show I like than just endlessly pay $200 a month for stuff I don't watch. So, so there's that. But the other issue I think is, it's the cable companies that really are, at risk. They keep upping their prices. Of course, the profits are phenomenal, and that's why they're doing it. But they keep trying to lock us in more and more. And that's kind of my point at the beginning of this was simply that, I'm hearing from all these neighbors and friends beyond the neighborhood who are saying, oh, I finally ditched my cable and my phone, and now I'm just going to use the internet. And how do you do this, Mary? Because we know you've been doing this for a long time. How do I get to watch all the shows that I want to watch? And then I just tell them, buy this here, buy that there, do this thing here, and you're done. I think a lot of people are considering that model now.
So I had an interesting conversation yesterday that I want to tie into this. It was with someone at the major manufacturer of the set-top boxes for the cable companies. They own all the supply chain, the manufacturing, the logistics, and creating these things. And this industry for years is been just a very low margin industry. There's no growth. It's going to be a dying industry. They all know it, and so do the cable companies. And you're starting to see more devices like the Amazon Fire TV and Apple TV, where it's more dynamic content, like you're talking about. But the conversation became really interesting when we talked about those being a stepping stone to a bigger picture around the home being smarter and the Internet of Things. And the TV can be one of them. The content that you are watching, the games that you play, can become more personalized and dynamic and smarter. And you think about how Pandora works versus watching TV and how it starts to learn what you like and create profiling around you. We talk about data and profiling the individual and even going beyond just content, but everything in your house. And I think that's where the cable companies like Comcast and AT&T want to go. That's why they're doing these Uverse and trying to connect everything in your home, because they see that as the future. There are a couple of stepping stones to get there that we're seeing now with all these connected television type of boxes. But that's what they're looking at. They're looking at how can we connect all the data that we can get about you in the home in one spot, because that's where the interesting things and new business models are going to come from. And they have to move because the current business is stagnant and it's
Right.
not growing the way it is.
Can I say something about the business model, which is that you probably all read a while ago the Clay Christensen book about when a company has to move from one business model to the other, and it's often referred to as you fall off the S curve. There's an S curve. And
Yeah.
rightly, Mary, you say they could have a new model compared to the advertising model. Easy to say, really hard to do. And this is, again, Fred Wilson was talking recently about unbundling things. And as we see things unbundle, it does create opportunities for some other businesses. But it also, I think, as Rebecca mentions, it's part of a very big picture about how we're going to move. We're not even close to where TV is going to end up. I'm amazed that there's as much innovation going on in TV as there is, because I didn't think it would, people would pick up on it. But I think it's once you unbundle the one reason people buy cable, which is sports or a live event, what are you doing? What do you got there? Because that money in sports, all of that is a whole domain. We watch no sports at our house. So we also, like Mary, went to no cable recently. So, Denise, what do you think is going to happen?
Getting back to what Rebecca was saying about them figuring out what people want to watch, I think that's a really important thing. I had to find out about Orphan Black, which someone mentioned earlier in the show, from Fred von Lohman on Facebook, who started watching season 2 and gave it a big thumbs up. I'm like, what is this thing that you're talking about that I've never heard of? And I, of course, binged watched up, and then I think got a couple of you hooked on it. So, somebody other than a friend on Facebook, if they're smart about their business models, should have figured out I would love that show and should have put it in front of me, among all the hundreds and hundreds of options that we have and probably don't even want. If I have to watch Survivor Man do a show with Bigfoot or his son again, I think I might scream. I definitely think they have a long way to go there. It's a tough nut to crack because of the privacy ramifications and people being willing enough and trustful enough to give over that kind of data to someone like AT&T/Dish. But they've got to crack that nut, or we're left in the situation that Mary has described, where you have to figure it all out yourself and then selectively order in order to cut through all the noise. Mm-hmm. And it's just not ideal at all. And the clock on the wall agrees.
Right. Who's got the clock on the wall? Is that Hallie?
The bell?
Yeah. Yes.
That was my clock. Sorry.
I think the privacy issues are huge there. And I think especially after last summer, the summer of Snowden, as some people call it, people are extremely wary of what's happening with personal information, the tracking that happens on our phones and, on our computers. I mean, the incredibly intimate information, your health information, educational, personal stuff, dating, whatever it is that you do, is highly, highly exposed. Really easy for the government to get it. Really easy for companies to get it and use it effectively against you. A lot of times we don't even know what they're doing, right? So, I mean, you have to find out by going and reading an announcement, let's say, from a huge insurance company where they announce to all of their investors, that they're tracking people on social media and upping their premiums if they appear to be doing things that, I don't know if it's a health company, if they're doing things like drinking a lot or whatever, or they have friends who drink, or if like there was a financial services company that made an announcement to investors that they were tracking people's social media profiles, and if they were friends with people who are a bad credit risk, they were, reevaluating or canceling their credit cards. They hadn't done anything wrong. They had good credit scores, their own customers. But it was if they were friends with anyone. And it's like, how would you even know if you're friends with someone on Facebook who might
Yeah.
not pay their bills on time? Really, you're supposed to monitor that and then unfriend them? It's completely ridiculous. And yet, an executive at another financial services company suggested that. He was at a bank, and I actually have written a white paper on this about how the tracking happens and how it's used against us when we don't realize. And it's, so I'm imagining, and when we think of the Internet of Things, like everything in my house is, you know, effectively through the Wi-Fi wired up and reporting on me, am I then, having decisions made about me, employers, employment or insurance issues, or, issues to do with anything else in my life. I mean, maybe if I had kids and there was a custody issue, am I all of a sudden exposed and not even realizing that the decisions are being made and unable to respond if the information is incorrect? We don't
Hey,
allow
you're
people to
making
correct
me, I was
information
going to
in the
say,
US other than financial information on your credit report. And so,
you're making me think of this black shades thing. And don't forget, I want to talk
Yes.
about it because I read a little,
Yes.
but I know you guys know more about it. I want to hear about this. Talk about people looking at you, literally using your computer and your webcam to look
mhm,
Yeah.
into your house.
yep. Yeah, I mean, it's a huge problem. And all of our technologies are designed to take information and make it easily shareable. Not that companies necessarily or the government does a great job of doing that. We certainly know that they have issues normalizing data, so it's not like everything is just free flowing yet, but they're all working really hard to, get data and make it as free flowing as possible. And, at the point where they are fully capable of examining everything in all contexts. I mean, we are really under a microscope, and we don't have laws that protect us. And it's only because of the Snowden stuff that, Obama came out recently. Here we are, nearly a year later, and he's just come out and said, well, maybe we ought to rein in the NSA a little bit. I mean, it's like, thanks. Really? You think? So, I don't know. I mean, I am really concerned about this stuff because I know what's happening behind the scenes because I research this stuff and I look at it, and it's frightening. And people don't have the time to look at it. Our laws should be better at protecting us, but our government is, easily 20, 30 years behind in terms of understanding the technology. And when I say that, I mean our legislators. So they don't know what to stay out of and what to legislate, and how to shut certain bad behaviors down or give us rights. I mean, the rights we really ought to have is we should be able to fully see what people have on us. We should be able to correct it if something is incorrect or they've conflated somebody else with our profile. And we should be able to say, this doesn't go to a third party.
Right.
And we don't have any of those protections right now. So,
Right.
I'm not going to let anybody read my refrigerator and pass that all around. I don't want to share that information. It's too personal.
Sometimes when Mary talks, my head starts to swell because she's so
Sorry.
damn brilliant, and it's thick with information. But I heard one thing, and she said friends who drink. So I propose at this point of the show that and you'll remember this for the next time, that we all have a little something to commemorate the show sort of winding down. And I think these are brilliant, by the way. These
What is
little
that?
tiny, they're smaller than a split of,
Champagne?
yeah. I mean,
It's like a beer.
It's not good champagne, bad champagne. But what I like about it is because I'm the only person in my house who drinks alcohol ever. Steve doesn't drink at all, and I can't open a big bottle of champagne because I'm
Right.
not, it's just,
No,
it's too
yeah.
much for me. In my earlier years, no problem, and I mean that very sincerely. But this does the trick. It's a nice little
It's so
bottle.
cute.
So here's
Is
to
that
you.
in California, champagne?
Oh God, I don't know.
But the
It
bad
can't
news
be
with
cold.
champagne? It's not terrible, but you would think the most famous champagne people are the French, but with global warming, one of the best harvests of champagne recently is in England because they
What?
can grow it there now.
Are you kidding
Yeah.
me?
I am
Yeah,
not kidding.
England is becoming very popular for growing wine grapes. I mean, basically, most
Whoa.
of the French producers that are large and have money are going to England, buying land, planting grapes, because it's 5 to 8 years to get fully producing grapes, and it's like 25 grand an acre to plant the grapes. So it's not a cheap proposition. But they're going to England and they're planting grapes because that's the future of grape growing with climate change.
Holy
And look, we
moly.
just changed topics.
I love England and I love
Well,
grapes. Okay, we
I
did
had a
just
very
change
funny,
topics.
only in Orange County observation walking the dog recently through a park, and there was a bench. And laying on the bench, you could see was a paper bag wrapped around an empty bottle of champagne. And I went, oh, the bums here are so high class, thinking that it must have been, Mums or Cristal or something. But no, I took a peek inside and it was freshenette. So I guess that's just as easy to get as whatever else you might pick up.
So, are we done? Is this week, have we accomplished this week, or are there still other?
Hey.
There were other things on my list here.
Well,
Sure.
Do we
name
do we
something
need to
else,
talk
Jenna.
about them, or do we not care?
Here's my Corona for Denise in Southern California.
Woohoo! I hope there's a
We
lime.
did talk
I would
about
give you a
talking
lime, but
about
they're hard to come by these days.
water usage and some of the drought issues in California since most of us
cerveza
are in
fria.
California. That was one thing. I don't know if anybody has anything to say about it, but I can't remember any of the other topics.
Well, there were other acquisitions or rumored acquisitions that were kind of interesting, maybe interesting. Um, Again, Twitch with YouTube acquiring Twitch, Google with Divide, Apple with Beats. Of course, some of these are still just rumor, and they're taking a while. They're taking a while. Is that new that we hear about it and then it just takes forever to find out whether it's really happening, or is that kind of
that's
a newer
normal.
fun?
No.
You think that's old?
No, that's normal. I mean, during any acquisition or any deal like that, there's always a diligence process and where employees are exposed for whatever reason. And, people just start to talk with their friends and it just gets out very easily. And of course, you can't be honest with your employees all the time and tell them what's going on. So it happens. It's a long process and it's always going to get leaked because people can't always keep quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So, one more. We saw that Foursquare sort of decoupled or reinvented themselves, or took Swarm out of the Foursquare app and gave it its own life. Any Foursquare users among us, and what does it mean?
I used to use Foursquare. I don't use it anymore, and not even for privacy
Because
reasons.
of that hat.
I use it. I just don't use it because I find it really boring. This is my Southern Belle hat. What can I say? Here,
Sorry.
I'll fold it
It's
up
really
a little.
funny.
Is that better?
That is a fab hat.
So
Fab.
So the thing is that, I find it not really all that useful. I mean, there have been a few times when I have a few hundred friends on it. Other people check in, you check in, and you realize somebody's nearby. Like one time I remember Kevin Marks was around the corner having lunch, and I had just finished lunch, but I was on my way walking somewhere else for another meeting, and so I just, dashed in, and he was with a group of Google guys, and said hello, and then I went on to my meeting. So okay, maybe that's like your model Foursquare use, right? Like that's a success, but I don't really find it all that useful for me. I mean, it's.
Well, let me tell you, Kevin Marks uses Foursquare to really chronicle his expense report. He just notes wherever he's going. He throws it into Foursquare, and then he's always got a record of it. So I'm not sure that that's how Foursquare intended it to be used, but that's the way Kevin uses it, and it's pretty effective for him. I see he's very active on it.
My credit card statement functions that way too.
That's probably true.
And it's a lot less trouble. I actually don't have to push a bunch of buttons and enable location and do all this stuff on my phone. It's so I just, I wonder about Foursquare's future model. I mean, I love Dennis. I love what he did before with Dodgeball and his prior stuff. I've always really enjoyed him as a person. And so, there's a way where I have affection for him and I would like to see him succeed. But I've got to say, I mean, it feels like they're not really, making themselves terribly useful for people. But I could be wrong. I mean, maybe I'm just not the target user. I don't know.
No one else here uses it?
I'm not a user of Foursquare because I just don't want to broadcast what I'm doing. But I do like this idea of decoupling a specific feature for a use case. And I'll say that Facebook Messenger actually is one that I use a lot. That's an example of just the message feature that as a standalone app, I use it all the time. And I actually support the idea of focusing in on what your users are trying to do and make that possible for them. And I know when you're an early stage startup, you don't have the luxury of building different apps for different functionality. You have to just throw it all together, see what sticks. But once you really figure out what those use cases are and what people are trying to do and lasering in on that, then I think that's a great strategy. And listening to their customers. I mean, you look at what happened with how the growth of WhatsApp, which is phenomenal, and they didn't do nearly as much as Facebook, but they were just very specific at what people were trying to do. And I think Messenger does that. There may be more companies that try to do that. Foursquare isn't necessarily something I use, but for their users, they probably saw a need and were trying to fill that need. So I think it's a good move. It's also a move that the larger companies, not really small companies, can do because of resource constraints. But if you have that luxury and the size and the manpower, then I think focusing on your users and what their needs are is a good one.
Hallie, do you use Foursquare or Swarm now or anything?
I have a special history with Foursquare. I'm actually legally in my divorce agreement not allowed to use Foursquare because at the time I got divorced, my husband felt like anything that allowed our location, my son and mine, to be revealed would be dangerous.
Whoa.
Oh.
So whenever I hear the two syllables, I go, ooh.
Wow.
And that's just something that happened early when it started. And my son now is 18. He was about 8 when this was going on. And interestingly, now I have to say I'm glad a lot of the stuff that I wasn't happy with it originally as part of this agreement to kind of shut down what I could do online, I was, needless to say, not happy about. But what it ended up being as things got the proliferation of so much available data, the irony of it has been that it's probably been a good thing.
I don't know. Would you call a company early stage that's gotten $160 million in funding?
I mean, early, didn't they started
I know
a
it was
zillion
early
years
for you
ago.
when you
To
did
me
your
now,
divorce, Hallie, but I'm just referring to Rebecca's remark earlier. Do we think of early stage as 160 million and several, 5 or 6 rounds of funding?
No. My comment was saying that if you're a larger company, you have the luxury of doing these types of things. You probably don't have that luxury as a smaller company. You can probably only manage one app at a time and not 5 or 6.
Got it.
But
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's been
clarification.
interesting
Thanks.
that the way that location check-in services haven't really caught on with the general
Yeah.
public. That there was this fire around them way back in the day when Foursquare launched, and then various competitors and Facebook bolted it on. And now I just see, I think there is a small group of people that do, if your friends are doing it, and you're doing it, and that's how you guys find each other. That's one thing. I think that's far and away the minority of users. And when I see I don't really see people using it that way to connect and sort of serendipitously find their friends. It's much more braggy what I see, and what I see is on
I think so
Facebook and
too.
people. Here I am at a fine estate in Napa, sipping only the best English champagne.
Right. Or I'm at a
Yeah.
private airport, or I'm here, or
Yeah.
I'm at the Eiffel
Yes.
Tower. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
yeah, and you're totally right. And people do it on Facebook. I mean, location check-ins, they do that as well, or, whatever. So I get it. I mean, I think that's right.
That's a
It's
big
funny.
topic.
Looped is I'm thinking of them just because they were across the street and around the corner. Um, Looped was a really interesting example. They didn't really get a lot of users, but they took a lot of money. And so, I mean, at least Foursquare has like 45 or 40 million users or whatever it is. But Looped took a ton of money and didn't get the users, and they turned into a credit card processing company and just kind of they got bought and kind of faded away. But it's, I mean, I don't think any of the services other than the Facebook check-in, which is just a feature in Facebook, or Foursquare have really gone spread that far as something that people would do, whether it's for bragging rights or for trying to find your friends or whatever. I guess I just I kind of agree with Rebecca a little bit. Like another reason why I don't check in, I used to check in a lot, and I would only check in as I was leaving a place because I didn't want to get stalked.
Mm.
And
Same.
it's
Sort of defeats the
There's a
purpose.
big stalking issue, and I
Yeah.
think especially with women. And but I agree with Denise. I'm in spite of all that, I am surprised that these services haven't gone caught on more. I expected Foursquare to do more dynamic, to tie in more with retail establishments, and they've sort of given up on that new or that old model of the mayors and all that stuff,
Right.
the badges and the sort of gaming way of looking at this, I guess, just to put some fun into it. But yeah, I think it's changed a lot. I wonder if Swarm is, an attempt to sort of save whatever they have.
Yeah.
But I haven't used it enough. I just loaded it the other day, and I really haven't used it enough to know whether it's going to make the difference. So
it'll be interesting to see. I mean, they did just take a bunch of money, so I think they have some.
I got to do
They took
something.
35 million, I think, in December. So they
Mm.
have some money to,
Something.
try this out. I mean, I think they have a lot of employees and probably a lot of burn, but they probably have enough time to see if the strategy is gonna work. Um, but I
And
don't
we're
know. I mean, the thing about Facebook and location services is that I kind of put it on par a little bit, like with dating services.
hmm.
Like there's a ton of them,
That's what it's
and not
for.
that there's a ton of location services necessarily, but I mean, they all kind of try these different things, right? To get people to keep paying and or keep feeding the business model. And I mean, the business model that Foursquare had for a little while, which had to do with, offering coupons, like you go to a certain place, you check
Right.
in, you get a discount, or maybe you were the mayor and you get some special thing every time you went or something. It just like it doesn't feel like there's enough money in that to
Right.
sustain everything.
I've always
Well,
also.
another
Oh, go ahead.
another thing that happened is that, I mean, it's really just a feature, right? And once other platforms started integrating that feature, it
Right.
became not as useful for people
Yeah.
to go
Yeah.
to yet another app. I mean, now
Right.
you can just do it within Facebook. You can do it within Path. I do
Right.
it within Path because Path is very limited to my close friends. I only have maybe
Right.
30 contacts in there. So I'm not broadcasting.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
actually sharing with a limited number of people.
Right.
And I think those two reasons, they became sort of a little bit obsolete when
They
their
are.
feature just became integrated as something else into other
Right.
apps.
Yeah,
I mean, there's
I found
Groupon, there's
that
Living
where
Social. If you go
whenever
the
I look at
coupon
it,
route,
if I look at
and
it
then
and I click a
Well,
link, often I'll see it on Twitter, and I hit the Foursquare link, and it's just like a map. It's I always have the idea when somebody says, "Oh, I'm having fun at the Mexican bar on Fourth," then I'm going to see people having fun at the Mexican bar on Fourth. But what you see is just like a street address.
hmm
yeah, that's true too. There's a lot of competition. You have all the coupon companies, right? Living Social and Groupon and even Amazon, sends me a thing every day or every few days. And so you have that element, and then you have the piece of Yelp started check-ins,
Yeah.
and they've obviously got every location, known to man, well reviewed. And so it's, and then they added coupons too. So, that idea of a business model for Foursquare where coupons and, check-ins and getting specials because you checked in a lot, kind of went away. The other thing that's interesting to me, and I feel like I don't know, I've been waiting around for this for a while, is for the kind of, low grade gamification stuff to kind of shake out and for everyone to abandon it. I mean, just throwing badges and, you know, um, points or whatever into something. I mean, I get people respond to points and they want more, right? Everybody wants
But
more, but it doesn't mean anything. And after a
who's got
while, it gets
time?
tiresome and it's not really a game. A game is supposed to be about a challenge, right? And
Hmm.
the gamification where you just get badges and you get to be the mayor and you get some points. I mean, every day Facebook, or I'm sorry, Foursquare would tell me, well, you've got 20 points for this and you've got 30 points for that. And it's your first check in at this type of a place and you get some points for
Yeah.
that. And after a while, it's like, whatever, I don't care that I got 56 points today,
Right.
and
Yeah,
I just
points for
stopped
what?
doing it and getting badges, being the mayor. I
Right.
mean, in other words, once you do it, the challenge stops. That's not
Right.
gamification. That's not good gamification. It's really low grade. And so I'm kind of glad that that's,
Yeah.
seems to be, people seem to be abandoning that as a kind of cheap feature set.
I want to make a comment just about the whole couponing, just a personal observation in my own life. I was initially on board with all the Groupon type of things and getting deals and maybe getting a coupon. But what I noticed about myself is I actually became a little bit embarrassed about whipping out a coupon or something in a restaurant or at a bar or whatever, wherever I
Mm.
was. And it became not really worth it to me to get that discount, to have to do that. And I don't know if anybody else felt that way ever, but it was just an observation that I noticed. I just stopped doing it.
So
Yeah.
we need secret couponing, is it what you're saying?
Well, wait. I have a
Well,
secret
Foursquare
coupon.
was secret
I
couponing.
used the secret coupon this week. I got a deal from an online company to come clean my house. They're coming to clean
Ooh.
my house tomorrow
Can you
at
please send
11.
them
So
to my
next week I'll
house?
tell you all about it.
Oh,
Please
I
send
still
them
use,
here.
But
don't
the
get me wrong,
joke
I still
is
use
I
coupons
clean my
for
house
other
fine.
things. Yeah, I use coupons for other things like house cleaning or whatever. But if I'm in a public setting and I have to show and
Whole
everybody's there, and
thing.
it's
I know.
especially if it's a nice
It's
restaurant,
embarrassing.
forget
Yeah.
it. I'm not
The
doing
other
that.
thing that I noticed was that restaurants and other, like I bought a couple of them, right, for things like what you're describing, which is kind of the public setting where you have to and they would always say you have to hand over the coupon first before you
Yeah.
can order your meal or do whatever you're going to do. And what I noticed is as soon as I said, I'm using this Groupon
Right.
to try out the place. They gave me basically substandard items.
Exactly.
And so
Yeah.
when they say, "Oh, you're from
Thanks.
Groupon, we have this prefix menu for you," and then you
Right.
look at the real menu and you look at the Groupon thing and you're like, "This isn't good. I don't even
Right.
want this." Now you've definitely made it so that I don't want to ever eat here again.
That's right.
Like
The
you
other
just
I saw
and you're
something.
basically
It
because
was either
they're
I read a
offering it for
story
half
or
price
saw
and then Groupon takes
TV
another half of that.
where
They're basically getting 25% of whatever they would have made if they just had you come in as a customer, right? So now they've turned you off from being a customer and they've lost money. It's so
thanks.
stupid. It's just really dumb.
So listen, I either read a story or saw TV where a guy like on a blind date uses the coupon and the woman is like this guy sucks,
I love that. That's
So
really being cheap. I mean, not that, I love a good bargain with everyone else, but I think if you're going out on your first date, probably not the time to use the
Yeah.
coupon.
Yeah.
Speaking of bargains, I think I'll have to regale you all with my great thrift store finds someday because,
ooh.
oh my gosh, get
Cool.
me out of the goddamn thrift shops, please. I need
Wait,
like a
I see a
12-step
tiki man
program,
behind
please.
you.
Yeah.
You see
I
what?
see a little
I
tiki
see
man
a
behind
little
you
silhouette of
over
a
there.
tiki
He's like
Oh
a
man.
yeah.
pencil cup or
Oh
something.
yeah, but
And some
this was
VW like
this
toy cars. Your stuff's already on display.
That's right. That's
Oh,
right.
yeah, I see what you mean. All my crap is already here. You're right. It probably is. Yep.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
so wait, we could sell stuff out of our houses with this show? Is that the idea?
Oh, please! I need to
Okay.
get rid of
Yeah.
so much
I
stuff.
like
eBay.
that.
eBay.
Yeah.
There you go.
That is
Or
called a
whatever. There's
spin-off
actually
show.
a ton of eBay competitors now. So you could try out. We could maybe what we could do is like a study across the group, and we could report back next week. We each take a company and see how it works, and come back. All the eBay competitors.
Ooh.
I did
I
that
look
last week with
love
Airbnb
for
since we
myself.
talked about Airbnb and I'd never
Yes.
used it
How'd
before.
it
Cool.
go?
I used it. It's great. I really like it. I can see why they're doing well, and that
Yeah.
people enjoy it and trust it, and it seems like they've thought through all the hard issues and have a nice way for you to vet who's going to rent your house, and uh, if you are the renter, you've got all the reviews to look at, and
Yeah.
you can feel
Yeah.
assured. And yeah, it seems to be a great and very disruptive to the hotel industry kind of service.
So you started, but did you actually rent your hotel?
I rented
I mean, your
place, yes.
house?
No, I did not put our house on Airbnb.
Okay.
I found a place to stay on Airbnb.
Oh,
for
okay. So you
later
went
in
the
the
other
summer.
way. Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. So have you stayed there yet or no?
No, it's going to be a couple of months down the road.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did it and I was actually staying I was driving on a driving trip to Seattle. And so it was like, we would gauge how far we were going to be and then I would like log in from the car and pick a place and then, sign up for it and then like 20 minutes later you get a text message, "You've been accepted." And then you drive to that place, get dinner and go to the people's house or their apartment or whatever it is that they're renting. So
Yeah.
that was actually kind of fun because it was very on the fly and it was easy in some ways or easier than a hotel because, I mean, first of all, using the internet to try to find a hotel is just a nightmare because everybody's spamming everything, right? And so you search for like a location in a hotel and you're never going to find the thing that you want because a million other places are trying to get your attention. But I liked Airbnb because I was able to just, it's obviously highly focused and targeted on the topic. And as you said, you can read the reviews and you just look something up and you find it and you say, "Yes, I want to do this." And, I liked it. It was very on the fly. It worked really well.
I was very impressed with how Martha Stewart everyone has gotten with their, spare unit over the garage on the notion
Yes.
that they can put it on Airbnb. And now, what used to be somebody's storage for old bikes and surfboards is this cool little place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
It's all
Hacienda.
Yeah.
Or something. I mean, and then the other thing is like we stayed with this one woman. She has, she's divided off half of her house. So it's separate entrance, a full bath, 2 bedrooms and a kitchen unit. and she actually makes banana bread every day.
Wow.
So you have like fresh organic eggs and organic milk and coffee and all this stuff. So she does the breakfast thing, but you have to make it yourself. But that's fine, you know.
That's good.
But I mean, then I'm doing the review, and I noticed that no one else has written this, so I write it up, you know. And then all of a sudden, now she's like booked solid because I
Ah.
wrote a good review, and I'm like, damn,
You shot
now I
yourself in the
could
foot.
never stay there. This is the
Damn.
scarcity issue, right? So
Yep.
anyway.
Wow. Okay. Well, yeah, I have some friends here in San Francisco who have their home on Airbnb, and but their home is for events, and they are quite. They have a gorgeous garden and a really pretty view. So this is it's like a perfect place for a garden wedding, and the social aspect actually of being an Airbnb host or whatever it's called, I'm not really sure, is I think quite important to them. They really enjoy meeting people and having these travelers from all over the place. I've seen them at parties with their travelers, and that's kind of cool. So, I don't think I could do it. I'm kind of private in my home. I don't think anybody wants to stay with, a bunch of like, okay, I'm going to show you why. Gray is right here. Here he is. Come on, Gray. You got to do it. Come on.
And the cat backs back.
No, he just backed away.
It's like, I don't want to be on
But
camera.
Typical cat.
He is
Won't do what you want him to do.
desperately trying to get on the show. That's what he's doing. Desperately.
Here's a shot.
Okay, so
He blew it.
again, we're having so much fun as usual, but we ought to wind this one up. So, any last thoughts? Anything that we have to say before we get out of here today?
I would like to make just a PSA, a public
Go
service
for it.
announcement. Related, I think, to black shades, but just some extortion type scams that are out there, just for our friends and families to be aware. A couple of family members and friends of mine have recently notified me about a few things that they've experienced. So one being my mom actually had her computer hijacked, and they, while she was on it, they were clicking around and actually called her at home at the same time, pretending to be a Microsoft service technician.
Ooh.
And was, sorry?
I said,
I'm
ooh.
surprised by that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So obviously, as soon as he said, you have to pay a certain amount in order for us to fix it, she knew right away, closed down her computer, and took it immediately to a shop to get fixed. So that's one that you should be aware of. The other one I have heard about is people hacking into your phone and then calling you and calling you and calling you and messaging you incessantly, so that you end up, and they're saying all sorts of things, whatever, to try to get you to turn your phone off.
Mm.
Once they do that, they somehow have your family member's phone number too, probably from hacking into your device. They call your family and say that they have held you for ransom and that they need to pay some sort of a fee, to get
Release
to
fee?
recover you. Yeah, release fee. And if they try to call you, they can't get, you've turned your device off, so they can't get through, and a lot of people believe that. So that's another case that you should be aware of. If somebody calls you in that circumstance, just call the police. It's just, I think it may be black shades hack happening, but these are two incidences that were mentioned to me in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So, thought I'd
Well,
mention
thank you for that. And please, people, if someone sends you a file or something that you're not expecting it, do not open it. Don't we know this by now? You should
Yes.
all know this by
Well,
now.
even if you are expecting it, I mean, there's enough malware out there that I had a friend who was expecting a file, and then from a particular person, and that person's email was hacked the same day. And,
God.
they ended up getting hacked as well because they, of course, opened the email and whatnot.
Okay, forget about what I said.
This thing is really interesting. The complexity that the quote unquote spammers or crackers are, basically engaging in, the level of complexity that they're engaging in to do this stuff. I've been at my parents' house a couple of times, and I'm hardly ever there. I hardly go to their house, but I've probably been there twice in the last 6 months. And both times the house phone has rung, and it was somebody calling saying, "You need to have your Windows machine. We're calling from Windows Technical Repair, blah, blah, blah." Well, all of us, I've gotten everyone in the family onto the Mac except my mom.
Right.
She refuses to leave Windows. And so initially I thought, oh, well, because I don't know, it's not my machine, and they could be calling here. And, I wonder if that wasn't an early version of what we're now hearing about around Blackshades, which is, because the last one was like 3 months ago, and prior to that it was 3 months. But basically they were trying to get me to give a bunch of information about her, and I said, I'm not giving you any information. If she's already engaged you to do service, like, she's
Right.
got your information and you've got hers. So, just because I'm wary of that stuff. But I was kind of amazed. I asked her later, and she has a relatively new Windows machine. She wasn't looking for any service. And I mean, it was kind of amazing. The other thing I would warn people about, and I get this constantly, is people keep calling my phone. It's a recording, actually. It's a machine, but I keep getting this call saying, AT&T customer, call in, or go to this website and log in with your credentials, and we'll give you a coupon. It started out $50, then it was 100, then 125. I mean, it literally, they're now up to $650. And I
Is it
got
a
this
game
call
show?
yesterday, and I was like, when are they going to stop? It's been going on for 4 months, and they keep trying to get me to log in. And I'm sure they've conned plenty of AT&T users to log in, give them their credentials, and then they're adding phones or doing whatever malicious thing they want to do. But it's amazing the amount of malware and, basically phishing attacks, corrupt activities that people are engaging in. It's extremely lucrative.
Mary,
So I
just
I
sort of
hear you on
quickly,
the
can you? Everyone
small.
always says that the Macs and the Apple computers are um, harder to break into and do these things too. Does that sound right to you? I mean, is that still
Yeah, I
true?
mean, I think that it is, in the sense that, if a link or an .exe comes through in email for a Windows user, I mean, you could be intentionally not clicking and just mouse over something and click, and all of
Yeah.
a sudden it's in your machine.
Mm.
That really doesn't happen in the Mac, right? You have to then provide your administrator password, and if you've set it up properly, that's hopefully going to, you're always logged in as a non-administrator. So they're never going to install stuff usually. That said, there is some malware for the Mac, and
Mm.
I don't think it's done a huge amount of damage, because Macs traditionally always shipped fairly closed down and secure, and Windows always shipped, fairly open.
Hmm.
Now, more recently, in the last, I would say, 4 years or so, Windows is shipping more closed, but then look at all the people with older versions of Windows and how vulnerable they are. So that's why my dad, my brother, cousins, siblings. I mean, I have to do tech support for like 50 people. Thanksgiving is a nightmare, and that model of having everything be open was just horrible. I would spend hours and hours on Thanksgiving, like fixing everyone's machines, or at some holiday or whatever. Every time I see, certain people, it's like, oh, can you fix my computer? I've got 2 hours worth of work for you. And it's like I have time for this. And so as soon as I get people onto the Mac, that just ends. It fixes. Like, I'm practically at the point where I'm just willing to buy people Macintosh so that I don't have to talk to them anymore about
This
their
is what
computers.
I so wanted to. I totally relate to this. I want to get my mom a Mac because she's driving me nuts. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, we've sort of extended our time here. And I've lost count of the costume changes this time, of the hats, of the sunglasses, but we do have to see this up close because this is pretty special.
In case you didn't get enough of St. Patrick's
Incredible.
Day this year, I'm just bringing it back for you.
Those are fabulous.
Yes. So
Oh.
I have to go. I have to go collect my little leprechaun from school.
I love that, Rebecca.
Yeah, Rebecca's got the roller derby going.
Yeah,
Nice,
totally
nice.
cool.
And Mary, what happened to your Moroccan hat or whatever?
Yeah. Here, let me
Yeah.
do. This is
Let's
my
please
bead hat.
debut that
Let
for
me,
us.
I gotta do this.
And you all know
But
you're going to run out of
excuse me 1
hats.
second.
Yeah, I already ran out.
Hallie, you've run
Okay.
out.
Yeah, no, I had my son's bike hat on because he just got here
So
today.
this is
He's visiting, and he brought all
Aw.
his hats, and he brought his bike and everything from San Jose. So
Yay.
got here this morning.
And here's Mary.
Oh,
Here we go.
Very beautiful.
I love that thing.
bought it in Morocco for Burning Man, but hey, it's perfect for G3.
All right, so let's close this one out. Everyone just wave goodbye, say goodbye, and I want to remind everybody to sort of step out of their comfort zone, do something good, and come back and see us. We hopefully will get that G3 actually streaming from the Ustream G3 site, and check out the Facebook page. Did we ever alert anybody to that? It's a pretty easy. Let's see if we can just throw that on. Last thing. Hold on. Ah, there it is. Okay. All right. So 1, 2, 3. Everybody say bye bye.
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 Whoop whoop. Hang on. We didn't do that right.
Gotta shake it
Okay,
around.
one more time. Here we go. Everyone say bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.